Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome to a reading vlog. International Women's Day is this month, it's March 8th. I decided to, for the most part, read exclusively women this month. I say for the most part because I have two prior commitments to read Night Shift by Stephen King and the first book in the stand, also by Stephen King. So he will be the only man that graces my channel this month. One of the things that I wanted to do was explore women writing in the horror genre. If you can't tell from the other two books mentioned, Stephen King is the author that got me into horror, and I have since read some of the backlog that inspired his works, and I have tried to read some of the books around him. Mostly I've just ended up reading his sons. It's been a very homogenous horror experience, and so I decided to look up greatest women's horror of all time, and I pulled a couple from the list that I owned or that I purchased last year with my staff discount, and so this month, if you saw my TBR video linked above, I have pulled those from my to be read shelf. What I want to do at the beginning of each video is to read about one woman from Monster She Wrote, The Women Who Pioneered Horror and Speculative Fiction by Lisa Kroger and Melanie R. Anderson. So this is one of those fun, like, bathroom readers, coffee table readers, where like each little subsection is about one female author in history. I have read a few of them now, but I would like to keep going. I'm also keeping a list of things that I want to read in the future in the back, so I want to continue to do that. So the book that I really want to read first is White is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi, just because it sounds up my alley. There's part of me that wants to go in like chronological order and pick the oldest woman on the list, which is Shirley Jackson, but I've already read a few of her works, and this is supposed to be about exploring the horror fiction that women are writing. So I want to definitely prioritize Helen Oyeyemi. She's a woman of color, so I would love to see what she is doing in this genre and why it is that women's horror fiction tends to be published as literary fiction versus genre fiction. So that's a question I'm keeping in mind as I'm reading, like the difference between like why is Stephen King genre horror and Helen Oyeyemi is literary fiction, but also horror. Who knows? What lady are we gonna be learning about? Alice Askew, 1874 to 1917. Let me read this and I'll share with you what I learned. Okay, so what I have learned. Alice Askew is actually a wife and husband writing team of Alice and Claude Askew, and they're most well known for supernatural detective stories, and they served as war correspondents attached to a British medical unit in World War I. And then in 1917, they both died tragically when their ship was hit by a German submarine. And they left behind more than 90 works. It says here that their major contribution to horror is in the subgenre of occult detective fiction. That's pretty noteworthy and definitely something that I think we can easily see being built upon. It almost sounds like Ghostbusters. It sounds like they're writing Ghostbusters. Their detective Vance and his sidekick Dexter are effectively Sherlock Holmes and Watson, only the cases they solve are weirder. The detectives are part of an organization known as the Ghost Circle, though the group is never clearly described. They're the ones you call if your problem is otherworldly. So now I'm gonna start White is for Witching. So I have never read any Helen Oyeyemi before, but she has quite the publication like backlog. If I like her, I am the type of person who does like to explore an author's body of works if I'm really into somebody. So that's nice to see. I'm losing the light, so I thought I would just update you. So far, I'm getting like very strong fairy tale vibes. It's a family story. It opens with this little foreword between Orr's perspective, Elliot's perspective, and 29 Barton Road. Each of these are narrating to let us know where is Miranda, or where they think Miranda is. Is Miranda alive? And what happened to Lily Silver? So it's a very like intriguing beginning to this book, because you're like, is Miranda alive? Like, how do we get there? I want to know. I really like that as a way to start the book. And then like it seems like the next section, I'm having a hard time telling who is narrating it, but it almost seems like in the vein of like The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, that the house is going to be a character in this one. And I'm excited. I am really enjoying this. I was like, oh, I'll just read like the first chapter and then update you. And then I read a lot. So because I'm losing the lighting, oh, my hair is still wet from my shower. Because I'm losing the lighting, I'm gonna stop updating for today. That's that. So excited that I started with this. And I like that it's drawing on fairy tales, which are like pretty horrific at their roots. Okay, good morning. So, second day of the reading vlog. I'm gonna have some coffee. Right now I'm drinking Starbucks Africa series. I don't like it. I really like my my dark roast from Starbucks that smells like an ashtray. Like the first time I bought it, I was like, oh, dark and roasty, that sounds good. And I opened the bag and I was like, oh shit, this smells like an ashtray. What have I done? But it smells like an ashtray, but tastes like hot chocolate. Like, I will guzzle cups of this coffee. Also, I've recently gotten really into oat milk instead of almond milk. Oat milk is apparently better for the environment. And this one froths. Like, if you want to do like steamed milk beverages, this works for it. All right, coffee is in the body, so it is time to read about another women in horror. And today we have Speaker to the Spirits, Marjorie Lawrence, 1889 to 1968. And so I'm going to learn a little bit about Marjorie Lawrence and I will report back. So, Marjorie Lawrence, badass human. She didn't just write ghost stories, supernatural stories. She believed in it. She had experienced some losses in her life and became a dedicated spiritualist and believed that she was communicating with the dead, including her dead husband. She was a world traveler, traveled all over Europe, Africa, Jamaica. She was also like very into women's rights, equality, subverting gender roles in her fiction, and in 1929 she wrote an essay called I Don't Want to Be a Mother for Cosmopolitan magazine. Not only did she push boundaries in her fiction, she sort of pushed boundaries for the normative role of women in her own life. She really valued being independent and her time spent traveling, and so even though she did marry, she never became a mother. She sounds like a really cool human. And now I'm gonna read some White is for Witching, and so far I'm really enjoying this. It's very readable, very beautifully written. Although I will say the switching perspectives, like the narrative point of view, is a little bit confusing, and I have to sort of reorient myself. Like, we'll go from like the brother's perspective to the house's perspective, but there isn't a lot of clear delineation between the two, and all of a sudden you're like, the person threw open my windows, and you're like, wait a minute, now I'm reading from the house's perspective. So maybe that's something that I will get used to as I read further, but now it's jarring whenever I realize I'm reading from the house's perspective. So first of all, I have decided that today is a pajama day. Appreciate purple cat pajama pants. The other thing that I'm noticing is I'm getting really strong, like, Hill House vibes, yes, but also I think it's partly because the Silver family home is a hotel. It was a big old home that was too big for a little family of 4, and the father, the patriarch, Luke, really wanted to turn it into a bed and breakfast. He loves cooking, and so he really wanted to turn it into a hotel, and some weird shit is going on in the hotel. They have caretakers Aziri and Esma, and their children, the elder child Demi, somehow ended up stuck in the elevator overnight between floors, and she was found just like standing in the corner of the elevator looking at the alarm button but not pressing it. It's after this that the family has a bit of a scare. Like they become very uneasy with the Dover home. They decide to leave, even though it sounds like they're undocumented immigrants and that they are sort of being paid under the table. They live at this hotel that they work at, but they are so afraid of this hotel that they're going to risk it to move. And so the daughters write Miranda a letter that says, "This house is bigger than you know. There are extra floors with lots of people on them. They are looking people. They look at you and they never move. We do not like them. We do not like this house and we are glad to be going." So I'm getting Overlook Hotel vibes, just in the idea that, I'm not wearing my glasses. That's why I can't see. I was like, oh, I can't see. Better push up my glasses. I'm not wearing them. I'm getting Overlook Hotel vibes in that this house seems to have things that go beyond like the surface appearance. There's more life contained within the walls than at first glance you see. I'm curious to see where this goes. Also, absolutely fascinated by Miranda's pica. So Miranda eats chalk and other things, but mostly chalk, to the detriment of her own health. And she has been in treatment because she had some sort of mental breakdown. It says, like, she's mentioned that she went mad before after her mother died, but she's not mad now, but she's still eating chalk. It sounds like she's absolutely skeletal, but she doesn't see herself as too thin, so there's this disordered eating disorder through line throughout this narrative. And given that this is a woman writing a horror novel, or a woman writing a narrative that people have deemed horrific, because genre horror is different than, I guess, just a novel that is horrific. I don't know. That's something that I have to sort of work through still. It's interesting that a preoccupation with body and disordered eating, it's a horrific part of this text, that her family is deeply uncomfortable with this compulsion to eat things that aren't nourishing, this rejection of nourishment. Like, there's a moment where the mother has bargained with Miranda before she died. There was a bargain struck that, like, you have to eat a certain number of bites of actual food. We can't get you to not eat chalk, but we can get you to eat a certain number of bites of food. Miranda accidentally counts this bite of Christmas dinner out loud, and it makes everybody deeply uncomfortable because it, I guess, highlights that her uber thin body that everybody recognizes as like acceptable, except for the family, right? Like, it's chic to be thin when she is dress shopping for clothes that fit her too small frame, and she's in this fitted dress. Like, the dress shop employees are like, oh my gosh, you look so beautiful. And her father's like, no, I can't buy this dress because you're too thin. I'm not going to buy you clothes to fit this new frame. I want you to eat until your old clothes fit. And like, there's this deep horror from the people who know her well of seeing her be so drastically underweight, and then the rest of the world being like, oh no, you're beautiful, you look fine. There's this disconnect there, and I think that sort of plays into the horror. It's been a while since I have flown through literary fiction in this way. So far, very much enjoying this. I am going to have a cup of tea. This is David's Tea's, we affectionately call it Christmas crack. It is it Santa's Secret? I think that might be the actual name of it. It's like vanilla and mint, and it's a black tea, and it is delicious. So I'm gonna have a cup of this and continue reading Whitest for Witching. So I have just been working on my notes for the Red Rum live show this week, and I'm gonna stop and take a break and eat some lunch. I used up the rest of the spinach that's in the fridge and looking sad. I have chickpeas and pecans and the crushed up debris of the Tostitos bag for something crunchy, nutritional yeast, and we were also out of salad dressing, so I mixed up some olive oil, vinegar, Dijon mustard, agave, frozen parsley. I have no idea what this is gonna taste like. Good morning. You are precariously perched on a footstool. This is so much easier with a phone. I am gonna start the day with Monster, She Wrote. The women who pioneered horror and speculative fiction. We're gonna learn about a new lady this morning. Who is that human? Deon Fortune, Britain's psychic defender. Deon Fortune sounds like a little bit of a interesting human. She believed that magic could help seemingly untreatable mental disorders, reported visions and psychic ability, and she ended up developing a sort of like religion or cult, and her feminist-friendly magic, her nonfiction writing, is apparently what laid the foundation for modern Wicca. Her horror novels included a lot of discussions of women's sexual freedom and the idea that women being more sexually free could lead to like ease of their mental health issues. It's interesting nonetheless that she shaped so many things and had some kind of radical ideas. My battery is dying. I'm about to move on to White is for Witching, and yeah, I'm flying through this, so I'm excited. I'm excited to pick this up this morning. Today is Monday, March 9th, the day after International Women's Day. I had Sunday afternoon to just read, and I finished White is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi, and like I could not put it down. It got so tense. The blurring of the real and unreal, or real and supernatural, was phenomenal. It was absolutely horrifying. If you like The Shining by Stephen King, once the hotel sort of starts to come alive and call out to Jack Torrance, if you like that aspect of The Shining, this might be for you. If you like The Haunting of Hill House and the idea of a house coming alive, we occasionally get to see from her perspective and how possessive she is of the women in the house, and specifically the Silver Women. I think it benefits a reread. Despite it sort of being a horror novel, I can totally see how it's horrific too. In terms of women writing horror, there's a lot in here about the domestic space of the home as a place of safety, the home as a place of abuse, the labor, women's labor that occurs in the home. I think in the traditional sense, historically, women have been responsible for the home, and here this relationship goes the other way. The home is responsible for the women. I would love to reread it, and I would love to make this a book club book at some point in the future and discuss it with other people, because there's just so much going on. There's a lot going on with race as well. Every black person that steps into the home is like deeply racist. I don't quite know what to do with that. I think I need to reread it and unpack it, which is why I would love to do this as a book club book to get other people's perspective on it, because it was just phenomenal. It was beautifully written, very fluid. I feel like people who like Murakami, people who like Shirley Jackson, people who like fairy tales, there's so much storytelling in here and like riffing on fairy tales. It's phenomenal. So I think that brings me to the end of this vlog. I had so much fun reading White is for Witching, and if you have read this, I would love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments down below. Also, let me know if you've read any other Helen Oyeyemi, what you think about the rest of her works and which one I should check out next, because I would definitely love to read more by this author. I loved the writing. Would definitely recommend checking this out if you can handle disordered eating, a little bit of trauma, and like, I think it's more psychological horror than anything else. Before we go, we have to thank my patrons. Thank you, patrons, for making videos like this and long-form projects like Lumos possible. I really appreciate the work that you enable me to do. If you are interested in becoming a patron and supporting the channel, links to the Patreon page will be on the screen and in the description box down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.